is all over. Now, in this boarding school, we had to translate parts of the Bible from Latin to Greek and from Greek to German. And then I learned that in the Bible, the God, which is described there, he uses a vehicle to move around. He descends on the holy mountain with smoke and fire and trembling and loud noise and so on. And he made some mistakes. So of a sudden, I had doubts in my own Catholic education. And I simply wanted to find out if other communities in antiquity have similar traditions than we have it from the Christian and the Jewish tradition. That was the beginning of Chariots of the Gods. Long time ago, over 50 years. In the meantime, I'm an 84-year-old man. Of course, I'm married since 58 years with the same wife. I have 2 grandchildren, and I'm happy to be alive and to work as I do it. Well, as every child, I was not different, except I was always a musician. I was always trying to play some instruments. Now as a boy, as a small boy, the drums, and later growing up in school, the trumpet, and of course the piano. Of course, even as a boy, I was a member of a band, a jazz band at that time. If I would not have become a best-selling author, my career would have gone in a direction of music. From my family, we came from the hotel business. My grandmother had a hotel with a restaurant, so I was growing up in the hotel and restaurant business. And of course, I made first my high school in this boarding school in the French-speaking part of Switzerland. So 6 years in that boarding school. You know, in the boarding school we had, for example, translated part of the Bible. It's the second book in Moses. Before the Lord descends on the holy mountain, he gives order to Moses that Moses should create a gate around the holy mountain. Otherwise, the Israelites would be destroyed. So Moses constructs a gate. And then the Lord descends with smoke and fire and trembling and loud noise. So I said to myself, my God, the real Almighty God of all religion, that the Spirit of the universe does not need to construct first a gate for safety, does not come down with smoke and fire and loud noise. So I had my doubts in that boarding school, and of course I was talking to my professors. And they were not afraid. They said, Eric, if you think in this direction, you should learn much more about the old scriptures before you discuss this. And they told me, Eric, go to Father, whatever the name was, and ask for a book of Enoch. I asked for a book of Enoch. And I read the book of Enoch. And I was completely confused. You know, Enoch in the Bible, you simply hear that he was the first human who disappeared in a fiery chariot from this planet. And they say he was the 7th patriarch before the Great Flood. Now, roughly 180 years ago, a British explorer came to Ethiopia. And in Ethiopia, he came into an old library. And in this old library, he found a book with the title, The Book of Enoch. Slowly, he translated the book of Enoch from the Ethiopian language into English, later from English into German. And now as a boy, I had the German translation before my eyes. And I was completely shocked, because Enoch speaks in the first person, an eyewitness, not in the third person. He says he was 12 years old. The whole community of the village wanted to go to sleep. Then they hear the noise in the sky. They saw a light in the sky. Of a sudden, the light fell down to the earth, and all the inhabitants of the village ran away. They were afraid, except Enoch. He says, I stood there in astonishment. Then of a sudden, 2 beings came close to me in glittering clothes. And he says clearly, these 2 beings did not look like humans. They did not breathe like humans. They breathe differently. I never saw beings like this on earth. He's afraid. Enoch finally, he falls on his ground too. Then somebody picks him up and says to him, "Son of humans, don't be afraid. We won't hurt you." And then follows the whole story, an incredible story in the book of Enoch. So I was completely fascinated of Enoch. And later, of course, I learned that we find similar stories in the Maya text. The same thing happened in the old Indian text. Always one person is taken out. Also, they learn the language of the strangers. Enoch receives a writing device. Then they dictate them books about science, astronomy, calendar, engineering, and all this. Now the critics come and say, "Come on, this is ridiculous. How should extraterrestrials speak Enoch's language?" In our time, our ethnologists, they were visiting some tribe on the upper Amazon River or maybe on the upper Nile River. It was never a problem of learning the language of the natives within a short period. After 5-6 months, our ethnologists understood the languages of the tribe. These extraterrestrials, they behaved themselves like ethnologists would do. They studied their group before visiting them. So I'm not shocked at all if the stranger speaks to Enoch in Enoch's language. And the stranger says to Enoch, "Don't be afraid." And he says, "If you wish, you can come with us. We teach you." Enoch says, "Yes, I wish to be taught." He receives an overall, something like the same spacesuit which they had on. Then they go up. He describes over the earth. I saw the round earth, and I saw gigantic things. He compares them with brilliance, with diamonds and so on. Doors open, doors close. They go in there. He passes through strange gardens with vegetables and flowers which he had never seen on earth. Then he comes into a big room, and there in the center of the room there was a throne. And on this throne, the highest was sitting. When the three come in there, two of the extraterrestrials and Enoch, the highest stands up, walks a few steps toward Enoch, shakes his hand and says him, "Welcome here at our place." Now what I just told you is part of the book of Enoch, but not the way I told it to you. Because some 160 years ago, when Enoch was translated first from the Ethiopian language into English, all these brilliant professors at that time, they knew nothing about space travel, nothing about spaceships, nothing about flying. So they believed we have to see all these things in a religious context. So the translation is different to what I say. I am a deep believer in God, and all these things what is handed down is not belonging to God. God is omnipotent. Imagine for a second that my idea would be correct. So we were visited by beings from outer space. The next question is, where did these visitors come from? What is their evolution? Have they been influenced by another solar system? Okay, where did the other come from? And so on. You can play back the game for thousands or 100,000s of years. Finally, you arrive to a starting point where in every respect, with religion, you have to confess and to say, here is God. Here is the beginning. Here is the Spirit. So you never lose God. I never lost my God. I am one of these figures who still pray every evening. But my prayer really changed completely. Educated as a Christian, of course, I was praying to the Holy Mother Mary or to Jesus and the cross. In the meantime, I pray to what I call God. All through, I have no definition of God. I read quite some intelligent books about what is God. None of these scientists was able to make a definition of God. But our little spirit, our little understanding says there is a beginning of the universe. There must be creation. And this is what we call God. I call it today the spirit of the universe. First, I read as many books as possible concerning the beginning of the religions. So how did the Sumerian religion begin? How did the Egyptian religion begin? How did the Maya religion begin, and all this? And then being critical and saying, what's going on here? Give you an example. Every culture has its calendar, and every calendar has a starting point. We Christian, we have a Christian calendar, and the starting point was the birth of Jesus Christ. So the starting point is always very, very important for a certain culture, because you just don't start the calendar for nothing. The same thing happened in Central America. There is a calendar of the Maya, and the Maya calendar starts on August 11th, 3114 BC. So asking myself, what was the reason? Why have they started their Maya calendar on August 11, 3114 BC? What was so important? When the Spanish conqueror arrived in Central America, they found thousands and thousands of books written by the Maya. They destroyed them all, except 3 books which have left. Now just imagine in our society, if for a war or whatever, every Bible would be destroyed. But the priests and the believers in Christianity, they know the content of the Bible in their brain, so they start to rewrite the Bible. The same thing happened in Central America. All through the books were destroyed, the priests rewrote their old knowledge, and so the Chilam Balam book happened. And in the Chilam Balam book, one of the priests explains, why have our forefathers started the calendar of the Maya on August 11, 3014 BC? Because that was the day when the gods descended from the firmament. That was the starting point. So the next step was archaeology. First you look in archaeological textbooks, you see what discovery were made, and then you go there. I was in every archaeological place where I have written about, and not just like a tourist. I was sometimes there for months or weeks. Now in Central America, they found a secret groove, a tomb, with a stone plate, quite a block, weighing 10 tons. And on this stone block, an engraving, incredible engraving. You see something like a frame. And in the center of the frame, a young man is sitting, bending forward, almost like a motorizing cyclist. You clearly see he has an oxygen mask on his nose. He uses his 2 hands to manipulate some control. You see the upper hand, his fingers, the lower hand with the 4 fingers in the back. He's winding up something. He's sitting on a chair, and outside the frame, you see a linking flame. I was completely fascinated because the stone was chiseled unknown thousands of years ago. So I was there for at least 12 days talking with archaeologists and finally bring it into my books. So this is one of the optical proofs to say we were influenced by God. The difference between my point of view and the point of view of an archaeologist is the archaeologist does not take mythology for serious. They think mythology is all nonsense, and I take these mythologies and these religious books for honest.